This video only has one story, but trust me, there will be lots of content coming soon. Enjoy. Before I begin this story, I would like to mention that yes, this story is 100% true, and I've only told a few people who I'm very close to. I want to start out with that because the events that took place almost seem as if they were taken from a movie, but they weren't. When I read most stories on here, I'm not much of a fan of backstories, but to fully grasp the story, I do have to go back a little bit. At the time of this story, I was 17 years old and working a part-time job at a local movie theater. I absolutely loved working there. The managers were really laid back, and the employees were super fun to work with. Me and two of my favorite ushers, people that cleaned the theater, all worked the same shift from 5:30 to 10:15, except I was the closer, so I had to stay and work until 1 a.m. when all the movies ended and everybody left. Well, when we came in, there was an ambulance and a big part of our lobby was roped off. We all sat upstairs and waited to clock in, wondering what had happened. When we clocked in and got downstairs, we talked to somebody who had been working the whole day, and they told us that a man had died earlier due to what we believed was a heart attack. That whole event actually terrified us, but left us curious. Deaths in our area like that weren't common, so it was somewhat disturbing. Now, this happened around the time a movie called Ouija was coming out. The coincidence that this happened was horrible because one of my good friends had the idea of going to his house after work and bringing the Ouija board in to see if we can contact the man who had just died. At first I decided there was no way I would play with it due to my religious beliefs. I knew that if we played with the board we could get into some horrible stuff. Yet I decided we could just try it out, and if things got bad we could end it quick. This is where things would take a turn quick. My buddy left and got the board. The managers usually sit in the office downstairs chatting and doing their closing routines. I rushed through mine that night so we could see what we could find out. From the start, I should have known to stop playing with this horrible thing, but I never realized it. When we started, we couldn't get an answer, and my buddy just kept asking and kept asking. But as soon as I spoke, the piece moved. I asked a question, like what my name was, just to see if it would move, and it worked. Now, I thought it was my buddies messing with me. I asked what the name of my girlfriend at the time was, and it answered correctly. Then, before I could speak, it came off the name of a guy. At the time it didn't make sense, but months later, it was the name of a guy that my girlfriend was cheating on me with. We went on, and after enough personal questions, I realized it wasn't my buddies. Things only got worse. We started asking questions about the man who died there, and the board answered our questions. Towards the end of our questionings, the board began to act strange. Long story short, we soon found out that we hadn't gotten hold of the man who died. Instead, we got in touch with a demon. And the most haunting part about this was the demon only answered to me. This demon had a specific liking to me. Before we were able to finish, we heard a manager walking up the stairs and quickly hid the board. The manager came up and didn't notice anything, and it was nothing for us to sit in the upstairs. As soon as the manager left, my buddies bailed, saying they were too scared, as was I. We only forgot one crucial part of the Ouija board experience. We forgot to say goodbye. I never realized it until the next day, but I did know all the rules to a Ouija board. The next day was a Friday night, and my parents had left to go to town for a softball tournament with my sister. I hadn't thought any more of last night since nothing had been added on top of it. Around 5 o'clock, I was sitting in my living room watching The Office, easily one of my favorite TV shows of all time. When out of nowhere, the mood and the feeling of my house changed. About as soon as I looked up, I witnessed a chair from my kitchen thrown across the room. I was in absolute panic. I ran out of my house, grabbing my keys and wallet sitting by the door, and went into my car, driving off. I went to the Walmart closest to my house since it was a public place and I could gain my composure. After about an hour and a half of walking around, I decided I needed to get whatever was following me out of my house or out of my life. I spent the next hour and a half at Starbucks researching all the things I could do. Now, I know playing with one alone is bad, but I contacted my buddies to see if anything strange happened to them, and nothing happened. So I decided that it was just me and the demon wanted to talk to me and nobody else. So I took this back to my house with the intention of ending it there. A lot happened while I was playing around with the Ouija board, and I spent about 45 minutes talking to the demon who was now living with me. I talked back and forth with this demon, and due to my religious background, I refused to give up against it. The demon at one point said, "Sell soul," but I refused to do that. I said my prayers in my house, calling out to God to end it. Towards the end, there was silence on the board. I took my hands off the piece to see what silence meant during a Ouija board session and to see if I had gotten rid of the demon or what. About as soon as I took my hands off, that piece flew straight to goodbye. That's when I knew my mission was done. So I cut the board into 7 pieces and I buried it outside my house. My parents don't know of this, and hardly anyone I know actually knows this story, but I felt like it could be shared here. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the first video with the new microphone. If you did, please subscribe because there will be more content coming soon.